Oh, wait a minute. Okay. And we are live. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Level Up Live. I am Dr. Sherita Gaskins-Tillett. I am your host. This is the show where we highlight the amazing accomplishments of women physicians who have upleveled their lives and are helping others to do the same. I am super excited about our guest tonight. But before we introduce her, I'm just going to give a few minutes for others to log on and make a couple of announcements. Our fall retreat, A Weekend for Me, the premier wellness experience for professional women, is registration is open still, and I have decided to extend early bird pricing until September 10th. So early bird pricing has been extended until September 10th. www.aweekendforme.com for more details and to register. Also, feel free to DM me if you have any questions. On Thursday evening, this coming Thursday, the 31st at 7 p.m., we will have a book club. This is part two of the book club for Dr. Samara Brennan Prescott's book, The Parts We Don't Talk About. And it's really interesting because that book has so much content. There's so many different aspects to Dr. Samara's life and the different struggles that she has encountered. She writes from the perspective of a patient, a caregiver, and a physician. So, if you are able to make that, definitely do it. Check it will be posted on my page and also in the Level Up Lady Facebook group, the Zoom link to register. So let's get going. So we have with us tonight the amazing Dr. Catherine Toomer. Dr. Toomer is no stranger to us. She is a repeat guest, and she is actually going to be a speaker at A Weekend for Me. So again, no stranger, but I am going to read her bio for you guys. So Dr. Toomer is a family medicine and community health physician who founded health, wellness, and weight loss centers to remove the shaming and overwhelm so often experienced in wellness and weight loss spaces. Dr. Toomer graduated from Michigan State University College of Human Medicine in 1996 and completed her residency at Shands Hospitals at the University of Florida in Gainesville. She spent the majority of her professional life in rural South Carolina, providing primary care to underserved areas. Early in her career, Dr. Toomer developed her highly successful total wellness and weight loss programs to lose over 100 pounds, to get off insulin, reverse her type 2 diabetes, and survive postpartum cardiomyopathy. She treats and coaches others using a biopsychosocial approach to maximizing health and wellness in order to achieve and maintain weight health. When not coaching, Dr. Toomer sits on nonprofit and community advisory boards, is a keynote and TEDx speaker, a popular guest on numerous podcasts, a best-selling author, musician, and artist who lives in South Carolina with her husband, two Labradoodles, and an empty nest.
Yes.
Welcome, Dr. Toomer. How are you this evening?
I am great. I'm great. I'm great.
Well, I'm so happy to have you back with us tonight. I do like to, just in case there's some folks joining us tonight who, weren't on the last time that you were here. I like to start a little bit with your backstory, which is really quite remarkable. So if you could tell us, just we kind of went through your education, but tell us how you came to be a part of this health and weight management space.
Okay. Well, throughout my life, I respond quite heavily to stress, as many of us do.
Yeah.
And at the time that I was going through it, through medical school and through residency and then having two children in 3 years, getting married, moving several times, um, I my body reacted to that stress by pushing me farther and farther into diabetes. I was already predisposed genetically, and as I gained weight and as I got more stressed, I ended up full blown insulin dependent diabetic. And now of course we understand that a little bit more, but this was over 22 years ago when we really hadn't understood the hormonal contributions to obesity.
Sure.
And so I went into congestive heart failure right after my daughter was born. and my ejection fraction was 15%. For those of you who know, 55% is usually normal, 55 to 65%, and mine was at 15. And I was given about a 50% chance of living 5 years, and I needed help to survive. I wanted to see my babies grow up.
Yes.
And so I sought help, but no one wanted to touch me because of my heart. Everyone knew the high mortality rate in postpartum cardiomyopathy, and they said, focus on your heart. But that was the one thing I couldn't control was my heart.
Sure.
So I sought ways of being able to control my health, and I knew that if I got my diabetes under control, then I could, um, at least try to lose some weight, and that would at least give my heart less to do. But when I tried, I had no motivation. I mean, none. And I'm looking at my babies thinking, what is wrong with me? Why can't I get motivated to do what I need to do in order to get better? And realize that I was severely depressed. I had postpartum depression, I had cardiac depression. I already
Mm.
had chronic depression from all the stress from I had been under. And so that's where I focused first. And so when I started developing my program to reverse my diabetes, um, I knew that it was really important for a biopsychosocial approach to be to use a biopsychosocial approach, which I had learned in medical school and I had been using with my patients, but for some reason I hadn't used with myself.
Yes.
So I treated my depression first, and then that helped me have the motivation and the mindset to then do what else I had to do. I was very fortunate. My husband's also a physician. He took over all my food, all my preparation. Well, I couldn't prepare my own food anyway. I didn't have the energy. And within 6 months, I had lost about 60 pounds. I'd gotten off insulin, and 22 years later, I'm still here. And
Amazing.
with the introduction of GLP-1 medications, that actually really did the last step. I was sort of, I was doing very, very well for years and years and years. Then my congestive heart failure started deteriorating again, which is not unusual. But and so I was put on a GLP-1 medication to actually stabilize my heart, but that also made me lose more weight. And so by the time everything was said and done, I had lost 100 pounds. I used all of the knowledge I gathered through all of that, put it into a program that I use now to help my clients and patients, but also now I'm teaching other physicians to do the same because I'm just hearing horror stories of people trying to get healthy with weight loss. And I just thought, you know what? I have this knowledge, I'm going to share it.
Wow. Okay, so there is so much in this story. I hardly know where to begin, but I think the first thing I really want to ask, what I'm really curious about, and I know you pretty well, but I don't think I've ever asked you this question,
Mhm.
is when back then when you were trying to develop your program, what kind of research did you do? How did you stumble on the secret sauce that helped you
Mhm.
to lose that amount of weight in that short amount of time without being able to exercise? Because I
Mhm.
know that with your cardiac function being what it was, you weren't a candidate for exercise. So,
No.
so tell me a little bit about that process.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, at the time, I couldn't stand up and brush my teeth at the same time. I just
Wow.
didn't have the cardiac capacity. I couldn't bathe myself. Um, I couldn't walk across the room holding my baby. I either had to hold her or walk. I couldn't do both. And so what I did was learned rather quickly that I don't have much willpower and discipline, and that I love my sweets. Now, my husband kept them from me, but I can be persuasive. So I needed a way to still enjoy food. I really enjoy food. And that was really important for me. I didn't want to lose that joy. I didn't want to lose that excitement around food and the the self-care that you can use food for. And so what I did, instead of focusing on what I couldn't eat, which was carbohydrates, and this is long before we knew about ketogenic diets and how lower carbs help lose weight, I focused on what I could eat, and that was protein. And so everything I did revolved around protein. Everything I do now revolves around protein. Um, I eat based on how much protein I eat based on how much protein I have to eat first or how much protein I've had. And so I control what I eat based on that. And I've done that for the last 22 years. And that's what I really teach other people to do, so that it's not a punishment and it's something they can do for the rest of their lives. It has to be simple, because I had no energy. So I knew what I had to do was simple. And so that's what I stumbled upon. And it suddenly became easy. And I thought, why is everyone making this so difficult? And it's not. And so, and the more and more I told people about it, the more I realized that I had something pretty powerful, and very effective. And so I started using it.
So at what point, so is that the point at which you introduced it to your patients?
When I was actually out of medicine for 9 years, I didn't have, my health, it took me that long to get my health back. I also homeschooled in there a little bit. That kind of delayed it also. But it really took me a while to get my health back to the point where I could work again. And even then, when I went back to work, I could only go, my cardiologist would only agree to part-time. And so I took what I knew and I started applying it to my patients, who are all diabetic, many who were overweight or who had obesity. And I found that I just didn't have the time or the support to do it, because you have to, it takes a lot of talking, it takes a lot of attention. And many of us know in traditional medicine, you have 10-15 minutes
Right.
per appointment. That's not enough time. And so I ended up opening a micro practice so that I could have hour-long appointments if I needed, in order to then start helping people. And so that's what I've been doing ever since, for the last 7 years now.
So now it seems that you mentioned your biopsychosocial format. It seems that what you do is kind of get to the root cause, or some of the root causes of obesity. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I know that there's a lot of confusion. Oftentimes people who are overweight are thought of as being, of having no willpower, or somehow it's their fault that they're overweight, and no one really takes into account the physiologic things that are going on in their bodies that make them process foods differently. Can you talk to us about that?
To be truthful, anytime a human does anything, no matter what it is, you can find a biopsychosocial reason for why that is. And sometimes we can do something about it, and sometimes we can't. When it comes to obesity, you can have two people who eat the exact same thing, and you'll hear it all the time. People who are very, very thin, who eat whatever they want, and we say, oh gosh, they have such good genes.
Yes.
But when it's someone like I am, and if I eat whatever I want and I, gain very easily and very quickly, then it's like, oh my gosh, she's not eating properly, she's not exercising. Well, it's the same food. So if it's genes for the thin person, why isn't it genes for the person who isn't thin?
Right.
Because it is. And basically what our genetics do, it tells our body what to do with food when we've eaten it. And some people that is pushed towards fuel and their muscles just burn it off. And then you have people like I am, where you eat food and our body's constantly trying to push it towards fat. We're just predisposed, very efficient at taking food and making fat out of it. And so that's one. And so our muscles, even when we exercise, our muscles are competing against that process, trying to get fuel, when our rest of our body is trying to pull it into fat and make fat out of it. Because our bodies, it used to be where those of us who could hold on to fat survived longer, because humans used to be a feast or famine, were feast or famine animals. And so those of us who could make fat really efficiently survived, and those who couldn't didn't survive during the famine. And so it's just a maladaptive, what used to be an adaptive process that's become maladaptive now. But the other thing that happens with our genetics pushing us towards glucose dysregulation, because that's really what it is. It's our underlying, what our body does with carbohydrates broken down to glucose in our body. Our brain only uses glucose for energy, glucose and ketones, and that's another. But most of us do not have ketones unless we're starving.
Right.
And so our brain loves glucose, and glucose is our brain's drug. So when our brain isn't getting what its drug, it drives us to eat things that will give us that. So many times, especially those of us who are insulin resistant, pre-diabetic and diabetic, will crave carbohydrates. We crave carbohydrates, sweets, potato chips, bread, but we crave those things during stress also. And that's a clear sign that there's something hormonal going on. The reason we emotionally eat isn't because we're just emotional. It's because our brain is suddenly not getting its drug and it's driving us to eat its drug. And so that's what happens. It changes our food choices. It changes what our body does with food. It changes how we respond to food once we've eaten it. And it's all combined. And it also affects our moods. It affects our moods around food. It affects how our moods change with food. And so until that's regulated, really our body is hijacked by our hormones and our glucose.
So
And that's
how do you get people out of that cycle then? Because
there's a
you've
couple of
obviously been
ways.
very successful at doing this. So how do you get people out of that cycle?
First, I use every tool at my disposal. Medication first, mainly because um, the new medications that we've been hearing about. Well, let me rephrase that. The medications that we've newly heard about are, the GLP ones like Ozempic, Wegovy, Manjaro. Those are actually old classes of medications. They've been out since 2005. I've been using them for over 10 years. It's just that now people have become aware of them and they've become very popular. But they've always corrected blood sugar, they've always caused weight loss. Um, but what they do, and let me rephrase that, they don't cause weight loss. They actually treat the cause of weight gain.
Okay.
But the causes of weight gain, we've never been told. So everyone thinks it has to do with food when really it has to do with hormones. Our weight loss on those medications are from are from hormone regulation. And so what I do is I start there so that it helps us understand our body's cues. We don't know when we're hungry. We can't tell when we're full. We can't tell when, our body's had enough of something because our brain has not been regulated. And so the medications help to regulate that. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I'm not hungry. Or I've eaten enough and I'm not hungry anymore. And I won't just keep eating and keep eating because of some other process going on.
Right.
And so you start there. And then once your body is no longer competing with fat cells, trying to drive everything you eat to fat cells, suddenly you can use that food as fuel. And then you start doing other things. Exercise, because suddenly now your muscles are working more efficiently, so you can exercise and it matters. Right. The other is that your moods are stabilized because suddenly your blood sugars aren't making your moods go like this, and so your mood stabilized, and so you're not emotionally eating anymore. The other is that it changes all the things that cause weight gain, so that you can start focusing on using all your pillars for weight loss. And then over time, if there's there has to be a condition underlying, otherwise the medications don't work. And I say this to everyone: if you take Tylenol when you don't have a headache, what happens? Nothing.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with these medications. You can't lose weight on them unless there's an underlying process going on.
So, okay, so that brings a question that I don't think I've asked before either. So are there some people that you feel like don't have an underlying hormonal etiology for their weight gain?
Rarely.
Okay.
It's very rare. Because everything is being driven by either hormones, it's either psychosocial or it's biopsychosocial. So if you remove the biology, there's still a psychosocial reason.
Sure.
And that psychosocial reason can still be addressed and still be treated.
Okay.
And so, and the social part can be very strong. Family gatherings are around food.
Yes.
Friend gatherings are around food. You
Yeah.
know, we associate food with happiness, not just sadness. You know,
Right.
Thanksgiving is an emotional eating time.
Yeah.
And so um there can be, but um interestingly with people, and it's not very many, maybe like 2% of people, it's a little harder because it is more of a pleasure center reaction to food, and that becomes more of an addiction, and then it becomes a different way of treating.
Okay. All right. So now tell us about some of the results that you've seen in your patients.
um Although, now one of the reasons why I say weight health instead of weight loss is mainly because what I see in my patients are an improvement of their overall health, whether they lose weight, a lot of weight or not. Sometimes that weight is the weight of life, resting on their
Sure.
shoulders, and they've gotten rid of that. And so to me, that weight loss is just as important as the weight on a scale.
Right.
But having said all that, I have had anyone people lose, come to me for not, and not even for weight loss. They've come to me for weight loss. They're like, something's not right. I'm gaining weight in a weird place, but they're not overweight at all. They're just kind of trying to nip it in the bud, either because they're hitting menopause, or they, suddenly they've moved, their stress is changing their body to certain things. And when we check, it's like they're not overweight at all. They just are
Mhm.
over fat. It's like their fat to muscle
Okay.
ratio's off.
Sure.
And so
Sure.
all I do is help them shift their fat to muscle. And then they start feeling better. Their energy level goes up and that. So there's those people. And then anywhere for 5, 10, 15, 20. I've had the most, I think, is 150 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And that was someone who had gastric bypass, lost 300, gained back 150, and then I helped them lose that 150 again.
Okay. So now you mentioned at the outset that you've now branched into helping other physicians
Mm-hmm.
to add weight management to their practices. What prompted you to do that, and what is that process?
Well, what prompted me was to first become someone to help people was because I was shamed so much when I was trying to find help. How did you get this way? How did you let yourself do this? You're a doctor. You should have known better. I was going into congestive heart failure. I went to a physician. I went and said, something's wrong. And I was told, well, of course, you're fat. I mean, essentially, that's what I was told. You're fat. And you just had a baby. Of course, you're tired. Of course, you're short of breath. Of course, you're this. And I was going into heart failure.
Right. No.
And I'm thinking, whoa, if someone had just listened to me, then I would have, it would have been caught 2 weeks earlier.
Yes.
So when I started practicing, I said, you know what, I want to make sure that this doesn't happen. And so, and often when having conversations with my patients, they're like, you're the first doctor who's been nice to me about this.
Yes. I mean, and that's something really I found too in my practice.
Mm-hmm.
I had a patient one that I remember in particular who was overweight, and she said the reason that she liked coming to me was because I didn't judge her and I didn't say mean
Mm-hmm.
things to her about her weight.
Yep.
And so, I think for us as physicians too, we have to be cognizant of the power of our words and the
Mm-hmm.
impact that has on our patients.
Yes. We really have to check our bias and our privilege and
Yes.
our prejudice. And there is thin privilege. Don't let anybody, there really is.
Yes.
People who have never had to struggle with weight loss really just don't understand the psychosocial impact of being overweight and having obesity has on a person societally.
Right.
Society just really just like you don't have much worth. It's like you can't do anything about it because then it's like you're cheating, and if you don't do anything about it, then you're lazy and you have no discipline. It's just like there's no place for us to go. And so so in my practice, I just non-shaming is really, really, really important for me. But as I was helping more and more people, and especially as I started using social media to expand my reach and to start talking to people,
Mhm.
the horror stories. I mean, and the arguments I'm getting into with other physicians. people who should know better, who should know the physiology, who should understand the
Well,
endocrinology.
okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. You say that, but I don't really recall learning very much about the treatment of obesity in medical school.
We didn't. We learned all the processes, but we didn't learn it in connection to obesity. And that therein lies your answer.
Right.
That's why
Yeah.
I teach people now, because we don't learn it. It is every single doctor will tell you there have been patients asking them to help them lose weight. Yeah. All of us get asked, and we get the wrong answer. Exercise more, eat less.
Right.
It doesn't work if there's an underlying hormonal dysregulation, which there always is. It can work in the extreme, but why white knuckle it the whole time?
And it won't constantly. It's hard to sustain, right?
It really is. It really is. And of course, there are some people who've done that and who are able to do that, who you know, well, I did it, you can do it too. Well, if we could all do it, then we'd all have done it.
Right. Right.
You know, I can't make myself 6 feet tall. I'm 5 feet tall. I'll never be 6 feet tall.
Right. That's
my genetics. So, you know, why should I ignore my other genetics and just, you know, only look at the things that I can't change? And I can't change those things. So what I started doing was teaching other doctors. And so what it is, it's actually a 4-part program. And it starts off with understanding our own bias and our own prejudice and how to assess it. Not just, oh, you are biased and you are, but am I? How do I know? Well, here, use this tool to determine whether there's some issue. What are your expectations of patients? Why are you interested in you helping patients lose weight? And so, and then it's also helping the patient. Those of us who have been overweight, who do have obesity, have been shamed so much that we've internalized it. So even we have attitudes about ourselves that aren't true. And so it's really important to then help your patients with their own bias, with their own prejudice, with their own attitudes about themselves, so that they understand when things happen or don't happen, they stop beating themselves up and making the process harder. And then the second part is how to assess patients physically in their physiology, their biopsychosocial assessment, so that you know how to address each part. It's not enough to just look at the biology. You've got to understand. If someone has anxiety or ADHD or depression, I don't care how much you help them with the biology, the psychology is going to be fighting. And then if you don't address the sociology, they'll get sabotaged. If you do anything that makes it hard for their family to deal with, who makes it so they can't interact with their friends, go out with their friends, someone who likes to travel, it has to fit into their life where their life is now. And it's something they have to be able to do now and when they're 90. Otherwise, something's going to fall away and, you know, it all reverses. And so there's the pre-assessment, the assessment, and then the treatment of every pillar. So the medication pillars, the nutritional pillars, the social pillars, psychological pillars, all of those being addressed. And then the final part of it is how to make money. Because, I mean, we can do all that, but if we can't keep our lights on, it doesn't do us any good. Right. And so it's really important to be successful at it. And truth be told, weight loss is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yes. And it's being driven by people who honestly couldn't care less about our patients. They couldn't care about how much damage they're doing to them physiologically. They often don't care how much damage they're doing to them psychologically. There are these extreme measures that all they do is perpetuate the sense of failure. Right. Because they're not realistic and they're too extreme and they're not real life. And so it's really important then to help people in a way so that, one, you can get access to them, one, they'll come back and they'll do well, but also so that you can live. It makes it a way for people to help as many people as they can while making a good living, so that it makes it comfortable, and it's an incentive, because really we need that incentive. And so what's happened for me, because I'm 58 years old, I still have congestive heart failure. Being able to work part-time, having that flexibility is really been important. And being a weight loss doctor or weight health physician, as I call myself, has given me that freedom and that flexibility. And so I'm helping other people do that, showing them how they can make money by helping their patients with a process they really, really want and need, and in a way that's complete and comprehensive and compassionate, because the compassion part is really important. And can I just say hello to someone?
Sure.
Chris, no matter what live I do, every Tuesday is always there. Chris, I'm glad you found me. So I'm glad as soon as I realized I wasn't doing my own live, Chris was the person I thought about. I made sure I had something somewhere so that Chris could find me today, because always, always here.
And then we also need to, I had left this up just to say hi to Dr. Tawana. She put a testimony here that she's 52 pounds down using your pillars, that she's been working out, and that, her depression and anxiety were treated. So just, someone, giving a testimony to the help that you've given to them.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gayad. I appreciate that very, very much. And it really does mean a lot to me. And I know some people that's the other part of the process, is that I try to shift people away from the focus on weight and more the focus on how you feel. And sometimes it can get frustrating with people who work with me, because I may not ever ask how much weight you lost. I may not ever know, because I'm so concerned on how the person feels that the weight is secondary, because that's going to go. Your body's going to go wherever it's going to go if you get everything else in order. And so that really is the least important part of the process, because it's just a number. It's just a symptom of everything else that's going on.
So how do you get patients to stop focusing so much on the number and to embrace the total wellness that you're offering?
By managing expectations, by try to help the process become so important to them that they stop caring because they feel so good. One of the biggest compliments I ever get is that I feel so good right now, I don't care if I ever lose another pound or not. And I hear that often. I feel that helping people feel empowered and confident. So really, it doesn't matter, because the bottom line is, relatively, there's always going to be someone who says we're overweight, or we need to lose weight, or whatever. So weight is so relative that it has to be in here. We have to lose this weight first. Often the weight in your brain is the weight that really has to be lost, not the weight on our body. And so really just getting people to the point where they just feel so much better, they just stop caring.
Okay.
That's
right.
The easiest way of putting it.
Great. So now, what is the future of total wellness and weight loss? I know now you've added this new arm where you're helping physicians to treat patients using your pillars. Where do you see this going next?
Well, I have created an institute. I figured, you know what? If I'm teaching people either for their own health, or I'm teaching people to help other people's health, then I'm a teacher. And what do teachers do? Where do you find teachers? In school?
In institutes, right?
Exactly. So Total Weight Health Institute was born. So there's 3 prongs to it. One is to help individual patients or as a group, because my program primarily is a group program where we meet weekly live and then one-on-one, and then I just try to find the causes of weight gain, and then we go after it. Then I'm now teaching any clinician. It doesn't have to be doctors. Anyone who sees patients for any reason. So even if it's someone who cannot prescribe, they may not be able to write the prescriptions, but they can do all the rest of it. They still have to check their bias. They still have to know how to assess patients. They still need to be able to make a living, so they can use all the rest of it, and then they can hire somebody to do that part if they want. And so it's anyone who sees patients for any reason who wants to give them a comprehensive and compassionate place to go. And then the third part of it is going to be creating an organization that acts as the weight loss component of of underserved area
Hmm.
community health centers, because right now almost all weight loss processes are cash based, and it's leaving out, it's such a privileged access
Right.
issue that it's leaving out whole populations of people who truly need it, where obesity rates are the highest, and they
Right.
can't use their Medicaid and Medicare, and you have insurances that just they're underinsured, so their insurances won't pay for anything. And so I wanted to create an entity where either where you could still use a sliding scale. You could use your insurance, you could use Medicaid, Medicare as part of a community health center so that it is covered and you get the help. And that's going to be the third part. And ultimately and so it's all under the umbrella of my institute.
Well, that is absolutely amazing. And and really because you're hitting on a really under a really neglected,
Hmm.
group of people. And
Yes.
and I think it's so short-sighted of the system because, they spend so much money on treating the after effects of obesity in that population, the hypertension, the diabetes, the cancers, the other things, the joint diseases and other things that happen. And I don't, I just, it's like a disconnect. I don't understand why they wouldn't want to
Hmm.
cover those, cover treatment on the front end and help to improve people's quality of life and end up spending less in the long run, it seems to me.
Well, I always say if you have to ask the question why, follow the money.
Yes.
Someone's making money
Unfortunately.
off of our illness, and that's why.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So now tell us, though, I do want to talk about a weekend for me for just a minute.
I'm so
Because like I said, Dr.
excited.
Tuber is going to be one of our wonderful speakers in Puerto Rico, November 2nd through 5th. So please join us. But so you mentioned we talked a lot about wellness and weight loss tonight. But I just want to say that you are a powerhouse. Like there's almost nothing that I mentioned that you can't do. She's an artist. She's a musician, and she also talks about a lot of other mindset things. So not just around weight loss. You did your TEDx talk about imposter syndrome
Mhm.
for one thing. So,
Yes.
tell us about some of your, I guess I would say self care,
Mhm.
wellness. What other kinds of things do you help people with?
I what I help people with is their self-awareness. So self-care to me starts with self-awareness, just knowing who you are, and then self-kindness.
Mm,
Self-care is sort of this blanket term,
sure.
but really what it really means is taking care of every part of you, and that's the biopsychosocial again. And so taking care of your friendships, your relationships, taking care of your relationships with yourself,
Yes,
taking
that's
care of
huge.
what you say to yourself, because we are very what we say to ourselves is the most powerful thing that we hear. It is the
And
most
sometimes the ugliest, though.
exactly. We're meaner to our we say stuff to ourselves that if anybody else said to us, we'd fight them. But we
Yes.
don't fight ourselves when we say it. And so it's really important then to just learn, and it's a muscle like anything else. You can build that muscle. It's difficult at the beginning, and you have to learn how to stop it. But then also learning how to see the world through a different lens, and also just changing information and shifting it to a more positive outlook. And when I make positive, I don't mean like toxic positivity, like everything's just beautiful. No, everything isn't just
Yeah.
beautiful. But when it's not beautiful, you need to make sure that it doesn't affect you in a way so that you end up taking in that poison instead of learning how to, it. And
Right.
so I'm very I mean, I am here because I should not be sitting here right now. Even right now, my ejection fraction is such that I should not be able to speak in complete sentences. I shouldn't be able to walk across a room without getting um because my ejection fraction went back to normal and then dropped again to 26. So I should not be functioning like I am. But the only reason I'm able to is from years and years of learning how that biofeedback of learning how to care for myself, keep my heart rate down. So I talk a lot about that. So stress management, how to be kind to yourself on all levels, um, and how to enjoy the world around you in a way so that it serves you, but not in the, and when people say selfish way, we have misconstrued that word.
Right.
Being selfish is important, because if we don't take care of ourselves and we don't regard ourselves as being the most important, no one else is going to.
Right.
That's not selfish, that's survival. And
Yeah.
so I talk a lot about that.
Great. Thank you so much. So now tell us, if we're interested in working with you, how can we find you?
The best way to find me is through my website, which is drtoomer.com. So that's drtoomer.com. And so that's the easiest way. There's a contact tab, and it is constantly being monitored either by me or my assistant. And so if you contact and just leave a message, I get it, and we immediately start contact and start figuring out a way to work together. And one of the things I want to make clear, if I do an assessment, I do free consultations. If I don't feel like I'm the best person to help, I will find someone who can. I have a huge network of people that I'm constantly adding to, and I'm always connecting other people to people. Like even now, people are contacting me about my program, and I'm like, you know what? You need to do the business before the business. Here, talk to that person first.
Okay.
I don't work with people just for the sake of working with them. So if I can't help, I will find someone who can.
Okay. So now I like to end on the same question or variation of the same question. And so if there's someone who is looking to up level their weight management, what is the single best thing that they can do?
Love themselves.
So it
Just
starts
understand
there, huh?
that you're important enough to be better and feel better and to be healthy, and that you deserve it. It's really mindset. Um, and it's nobody else's business. As soon as you tell somebody else, weight loss, weight health is not a spectator sport.
Right.
And
Right.
so, it's not, you're not going to be sitting on the 50-yard line with a stadium of people around you watching your process. Keep it to yourself. And
Yeah.
it's not because, if people notice, they notice. Let them notice. But ultimately it's yours, because it's not a linear thing. It's a zigzag, and it's life. So one day you may eat well, but you're feeling lousy. Another day you may feel wonderful and you're like, you know what, I'm going to eat that donut and I don't care. So what? That's life. And so, but you don't need somebody over you the whole time going, oh my gosh, what are you doing? I thought you said,
Right.
you know, and it's other people's opinions can derail processes very, very quickly. And
Yeah.
so keeping it to yourself, loving yourself enough so that knowing that you deserve it, and then small increments and small steps, nothing extreme. If you can't maintain it, it's not doing you any good. And one of the things I often say, if you're doing a process and you can't maintain it, the process failed you. You did not fail it. I often hear this, oh, I lost so much weight on Weight Watchers and then I couldn't do it anymore. And so it worked so well for me. Well, no, it didn't. If you gained your weight
Right.
back, it didn't work for you.
But then but then what's the damage that gets done to you psychologically in that process?
You feel like
Because
a
you're
failure.
right, you blame yourself, right?
Exactly.
Right, you're a failure.
Yep. Yep. We have learned, we have been taught a lie that there are processes out there that are for us, that work for us. And that if we have success on that process, it's the process. But if we don't have success on the process, it's our failure. And that is one of the biggest lies we've been told in this whole weight loss roller coaster that many of us have been on. And so, the truth be told, it's not glamorous. It is not exciting. It is very slow, but it's steady. And in fact, like Dr. Gigard likes to say, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
And that is really true. It just is.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for all that you do to help so many of us with our, weight management and our wellness, and from busting a lot of the myths, because we need voices like yours out here, because there are so many other voices that are saying things that are just not true, that are saying things that are harmful to people's well-being in the long run. So thank you so much for like I said, for all that you do, for being a visionary.
Well,
Really,
thank you.
I love
Oh,
the
well,
institute. I can't wait to see what it becomes and what all the things that are coming afterward.
well,
So
thank you for having me. I really, because it really is people like you and allowing people like me to have a place to speak really, really helps. And, I would love to be able to put on a retreat. I can't do that. I don't know if I can. Maybe one day I will. But so being
you can.
allowed to be a part of yours is really important because it gives me that outlet that I otherwise wouldn't have.
Well, we'll talk. Maybe we can do it together sometime. But anyway, all right. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you have questions afterwards, please put them in the chat. I forgot to say, if you're watching the replay, #replay, ask your questions. I will definitely get them to Dr. Toomer. Don't forget, register for A Weekend for Me, www.aweekendforme.com. Early bird pricing is available until September 10th. Take care. We will see you next week. Now, next week, we're actually going to have a special time. It's going to be at noon because our guest is in Europe. And at 7, I mean 6:30 at night, it's the middle of the night, and she wasn't really interested in that. So so we're going to do 12 noon on next Tuesday. So take care. Have a great night. Thank you again,
Nice.
Dr. Toomer.
Thank you for having me, really.